My name is Addison, and I am the chairman of West Northamptonshire Council. I am here today to hope that, like me, all of you will remember Holocaust Memorial Day on the 27th of January. It's an important day, important for us all to remember the atrocities that happened some years ago, atrocities that we really don't want to happen again. I remember well a film that I saw about the Windermere children. 300 children taken from concentration camps and taken to Windermere to resettle and to bring back to life, if you like. Please remember these children. Please remember everybody who suffered very, very badly during the Holocaust. And I ask you to join with us on the 27th of January to remember those that were lost during the Holocaust.
As always, this Holocaust Memorial Day is an important reminder of the scale and the extent of the dreadful acts that took place during the Holocaust and other atrocities. It's also a reminder that the risk of such inhumanity is sadly ever present. For that reason, we actively pause to remember. This year's theme for Holocaust Memorial Day, which is one day, can mean lots of different things. For me, I'm aware that every single day on its own gives us opportunity to create peace, comfort, tolerance and kindness. And actually I see that happening throughout Northampton and West Northants all the time. Actually, it also reminds me personally of the wise words of a lady I met well into her 80s when I was a child. She said that she believed the best days of her life were ahead of her because despite many great memories of her life, the days and the years ahead were the only ones that she could still shape and use to make a difference. She also said to me, she said, the past is history, the future is a mystery, but today is the best possible gift, and that's why they call it the present. I always liked that. So what does it tell us? It tells us that we must of course learn lessons from the past. It tells us also that we must always continue to make plans to create a better future. But above all, what we must do is use each of those wonderful todays that are gifted to us to remember and to continue to show kindness and tolerance.
I am Surrendra Malhotra, Chair of Northampton Interfaith Forum from the Hindu faith. Let us remember and reflect on Holocaust Memorial Day of all the atrocities that happened in the Holocaust under Nazi persecution in 1941 and subsequent genocides in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and lastly Darfur in 2003. Let us hope and pray the human race has learned its lesson to live in peace and harmony on planet Earth. I will finish with a poem by Barbara Stark. We played, we laughed, we were loved, we were ripped from the arms of our parents and thrown into the fire. We were nothing more than children. We had a future. We were going to be doctors, lawyers, rabbis, wives, teachers, mothers. We had dreams. Then we had no hope. We were taken away in the dead of the night, like cattle in cars, no air to breathe, smothering, crying, starving, dying. Separated from the world, to be no more. From the ashes hear our pleas. This atrocity to mankind cannot happen again. Remember us, for we were the children whose dreams and lives were stolen away. Thank you.
My dad was born Fritz Groschler in Jever, Friesland, North Germany in 1926. Son of Julius and Hedwig, brother to Hans, they lived a good and happy life until Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, November 1938, when the Nazis burnt every synagogue in Germany to the ground. My grandfather Julius rushed to the synagogue as he was the warden, but was arrested by the Nazis, taken to Bergen-Belsen, then later released on the promise that he would make Jever Juden-free, Jew-free. Dad spoke of having to move schools and shops with signs saying no dogs allowed, no Jews allowed, in that order. Realising the danger, Julius arranged for my dad and his brother to take the kinder transport to Britain in safety. The journey to England was made to be a great adventure, so Dad, aged 12, did not feel afraid. but he never understood why his mother didn't accompany them to the station. He learnt in later years from a book she was too sad to go. The boys were taken to Dovercourt in Leeds with barely any possessions. They were taught English by a rabbi who naturalised them and declared, "Now you are a Britisher." In 1939, Dad had his bar mitzvah in a suit he had grown out of, with only his cousin Trudy as his guest. How sad must his parents have been to miss that day. He worked selling ice cream outside a cemetery, on a Hoffman press, and in a factory where he had half his thumb sliced off. He eventually moved to London and changed his name to Frank Gale in order to join the British Army. There was still no word of his parents, and again, years later, he found about their demise from a book. Julius and Hedwig had kept their promise to the Nazis and made Jaffa Judenfrei, but it was too late for them. They were arrested, taken to Dachau, then to Theresienstadt, then Auschwitz, and murdered. When Dad was 18, he met my beautiful mum on top of a London bus going to the Astoria Ballroom. They married in 1951 and moved to Northampton to set up home in a business selling ladies' outside clothes called Florella Modes. It started on the market, then a shop on Abington Square, Mayfair, then Gold Street, and one in Kettering. He shut the doors December 1996 and died 2 weeks later, aged 70. In 1973, Mum, Dad and I had driven into Jaffa. Within 2 hours, Dad was approached and asked, "Are you the youngest son of the Groschler family?" Someone asked to see him and told him his mother was still alive 6 months before war ended. They gave him the keys to the Jewish cemetery, which was completely overgrown, but we fought our way through and found his grandparents' graves and the Jewish memorial. We left Jaffa soon after. It was aesthetically pleasing but ugly underneath. Then in 1984, Dad got a letter from a history teacher and his students in Jaffa. They were studying but found gaps in history from 1939 to 45, so they researched and were horrified to find out the disgusting truth. So they invited all the survivors back to Jaffa. They flew in from all over the world. We were apprehensive but made to feel so welcome by the historian Hartmut Peters and his students. We were invited to the pastor Volker Landik's house for Friday night dinner. A travelling rabbi came and lit the Shabbat candles and said the first Jewish prayers there since World War II had ended. On Saturday we went to church. The rabbi, pastor and a Catholic priest took the service, and together the whole congregation said the Lord's Prayer. Dad met his school friend Oswald Andrea, who hadn't known if Dad was dead or alive. He was there 1 minute, gone the next. We were taken on a tour of the area and visited the very well-kept Jewish cemetery, but the highlight was a civic reception at the Schloss, Jaffa Castle, which Dad's home and family business had overlooked. He was not allowed in as a child and remembered Hitler Youth marching around the grounds, but today he was guest of honour, thankfully with no swastikas. We left Jaffa with lifelong friends in Hartmut, Volker and the students. The years passed and Hartmut contacted us to say the house that now stood on the grounds where the synagogue originally was had become vacant, and he wanted to make it a Holocaust museum and name it the Groschler House after my grandfather Julius and his brother Herman. The next generation flew in from all over the world. My sister and I met cousins we'd never met before. We also all attended a civic reception as guests of honour in the Schloss. We then walked through the cobbled streets to see the Groschler House, with pictures of my grandfather by the door, photographs of the family and a voice recording of my dad inside. The sense of pride was just overwhelming. Hartmut, Volker and their working party had created this amazing place of learning for all the world to see. Remember and never forget, perpetuity is crucial. In 2017, we returned for the opening, and my sons and nephews hung the mezuzah from my parents' home on the wall of the Groschler House. It was so poignant. Then one day, no better day in fact, dawned on Monday, 26th of August 2019. My youngest son, Jacob, aged 13, was to have his bar mitzvah at the Groschler House, to stand where my dad, his grandfather, should have stood for his bar mitzvah in 1939. So all our family walked to the Groschler House to be met by the founders, Hartmut and Volker, their wives, the working party, representatives from the synagogue in Oldenburg, the mayor of Jaffa and yokel friends. Most of these people had never experienced a bar mitzvah, never mind a bar mitzvah in a Holocaust museum named after the bar mitzvah boy's great-grandfather. Normally a solemn environment where authentic information about the Holocaust is taught to students and exhibitions are showcased. but not today. Today was about the Jewish ethos of the family and celebrating all the good things in life. So taught by his aunt, led by his uncle and cousins, and with a picture of his grandfather looking down on him, Jacob delivered to an awestruck audience. You could hear a pin drop. Judaism was back in the room. The Torah tunes were being sung here once more. We threw sweets in appreciation, and mazel tovs and l'chaims were ringing out. Iko Andreas, son of my father's school friend, offered to play for us. He played Havana Gila and we danced. We danced where our ancestors before us had danced and celebrated. Happiness, love and laughter had finally returned.
Hi, my name is Sanela Saracevic Hujic, and I'm here today to say a few words and to support this year's Holocaust Memorial Day event on 27th of January. The theme of this year's event is one day. Holocaust Memorial Day is one day that we put aside to come together to remember, to learn about the Holocaust, Nazi persecution and the genocides that followed in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Herzegovina and Darfur, in the hope that there may be one day in the future with no genocide. We learn more about the past, we empathize with the others today, and we take action for a better future. My family and I fled the war in 1993 and started a new life in the UK. Many of my friends, neighbours and family were killed in the war. Fleeing from conflict in Bosnia, we arrived as refugees in the early 90s. I was very young when we had to evacuate from our hometown. We had no choice. We had to flee without any personal belongings. We walked for hours until we found a safe temporary refuge. Some of my school friends and neighbours were killed, and some were tortured in the concentration camps. But somehow, my family and I survived, and we ended up in many refugee centres before being able to come to the UK. It was terrifying to be a young girl watching people suffer, cry from hunger, and being frightened of the unknown. Despite everything I have been through, I had to start my life from the beginning. The most important lesson I can share to a young generation and people in general is to be honest, be kind, don't judge, have respect for others, and share the love. If we can all do this, the world will be a better place. It is extremely important to commemorate and remember what happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina, especially knowing when my friends, their family and neighbours were brutally killed simply because they were Muslims. Keeping the memory alive is important to honour the victims and survivors, and also encourage all of us to continue to strive to build a society that is inclusive and free from hatred. As a police officer and as a survivor, I take an immense interest in modern slavery and hate crime, subjects that are very close to my heart. The strength of survivors in sharing their stories and fighting for justice inspires us to take action.
Holocaust Memorial Day offers us a chance not just to remember those who have died in past genocides, but to recognise that the lives of very many people today are still overshadowed by the impact of the more recent atrocities across the world. The theme for Holocaust Memorial Day 2022 is One Day. Holocaust Memorial Day is one day, 27th of January, that we put aside to come together to remember, to learn about Holocaust, Nazi persecution and the genocides that followed in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur. In the hope that there may be one day in the future, no genocide. We learn more about the past, we empathise with others today and we take action for a better future. We, as West Northamptonshire Council, continue our collaboration with partners as we jointly work to create a safer, better future for generations to come. That's why days like today are so important. On Holocaust Memorial Day 2022, this one day, we all come together in our communities to learn from the Holocaust and genocides for a better future. Holocaust by Barbara Sonic. We played, we laughed, we were loved. We were ripped from the arms of our parents and thrown into the fire. We were nothing more than children. We had a future. We were going to be doctors, lawyers, rabbis, wives, teachers, mothers. We had dreams. Then we had no hope. We were taken away in the dead of night, like cattle in cars, no air to breathe, smothering, crying, starving, dying, separated from the world to be no more. This atrocity to mankind cannot happen again. Remember us, for we were the children whose dreams and lives were stolen away.
This 27th of January, people around the world will pause to mark the 77th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz and to remember the millions of victims murdered in the Holocaust and genocides such as those in Rwanda, Cambodia, Bosnia and Darfur. The theme of 2022's Holocaust Memorial Day is One Day, reflecting the fact that behind the huge number of victims are individual stories, individual tragedies, and on any one day, people could see absolutely everything taken from them, even their lives or the lives of their loved ones. When those of us in West Northamptonshire commemorate Holocaust Memorial Day, we may wish to choose one day that's special to us, maybe a birthday or anniversary, and read about the historical events on that day, in order to remind ourselves that despite their magnitude, genocides are still a series of personal tragedies. Through these simple acts of remembrance and dedication, we do our part in saying never again and pay our tribute to the victims of genocide throughout the years.
We recognise that the Holocaust shaped the foundations of modern civilization. Its unprecedented character and horror will always hold universal meaning.
We believe the Holocaust must have a permanent place in our nation's collective memory. We honour the survivors still with us and reaffirm our shared goals of mutual understanding and justice.
We must make sure that our future generations understand the causes of the Holocaust and reflect upon its consequences. We vow to remember the victims of Nazi persecution and all of genocide.
We value the sacrifices of those who have risked their lives to protect or rescue victims as a touchstone of human capacity for good in the face of evil.
We recognise that humanity is still scarred by the belief that race, religion, disability or sexuality may make some people's lives worth less than others.
Genocide, anti-Semitism, racism, xenophobia and discrimination still continue. We have a shared responsibility to fight these evils.
We pledge to strengthen our efforts to promote education and research about the Holocaust and other genocides. We will do our utmost to make sure that lessons of such events are fully learned.
We will continue to encourage Holocaust remembrance by holding an annual UK Holocaust Memorial Day. We condemn the evils of prejudice, discrimination and racism. We value a free, tolerant and democratic society.
Good morning everybody. This is the 22nd occasion that we have commemorated Holocaust Memorial Day here in Northampton. Last year, because of the pandemic, we had to do our presentations virtually. We had hoped that this year we would be able to be back in the Guildhall to a live audience, especially children, but sadly this hasn't been the case. So I'm having to record my message to you here today. I'd like to begin by thanking West Northants Council and Northampton Borough Council who have arranged this event for the last 22 years. In particular, I'd like to thank Councillor Jonathan Nunn and Councillor Anna King, with whom I've worked for the last few years. I also want to thank Vicky and Amy, Jenny and all the team who work very, very hard behind the scenes and have done everything to put this event on, including having to change everything at the last minute because of the Omicron surge. Every year Holocaust Memorial Day has a theme, and the theme of this year's event is One Day. Now, one day could have various meanings. The first, of course, is Holocaust Memorial Day itself. And that's the day when communities from all over the world come together to learn about the Holocaust, about the Nazi persecution, and the genocides that have followed since then, including Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia, Darfur, and Myanmar. Second aspect of one day is a day in the past. This could be a momentous, life-changing event, either in the lifetime of one person, or several people, or a whole community. And for example, the attack on the Warsaw Ghetto in 1943, or the massacre in Srebrenica in 1995. Or it could be a personal event when life changed. For example, school children in Germany of all religions had mixed together, had played together, had worked together, and had been friends together. And one day, a child who had previously been very friendly suddenly turned away and said, "I'm not allowed to talk to you, I'm not allowed to play with you." Why was that? Because the other child was Jewish, and Jewish children had to be ostracized, and the teachers had been told to keep them separate and said that other children weren't allowed to mix with them. Or perhaps the 23rd of February 2020, when Ahmaud Arbery, who was a young black man from Brunswick in Georgia, he was gunned down by 3 white men who were racists, and they shot him merely because he was jogging through a white area. Or perhaps one day could be one day in the future. And I can't do better to quote briefly from the famous "I Have a Dream" speech by Martin Luther King, when he said this: "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the colour of their skin, but by their character." And I also hope that one day in the future, these words will apply to all people of whatever colour, race, or religion. I have participated in every Holocaust Memorial Day event since it was set up, but this one will be my last as we are moving away from the area. And I look back over the past 22 years and I ask myself, what have we achieved during that time? And the answer is a great deal. In Northampton, we have excellent community relations thanks to the work of several organisations across the town and across the county, including NIFF, the Northampton Interfaith Forum. And I feel that we have achieved a lot over this time. Where we have failed, though, nationally and internationally, is to curb the influence of the Holocaust deniers. When you think of the Holocaust, there aren't many who try to justify it, although there are some you occasionally hear at rallies, protests and shouts of Hitler was right. So if you can't justify something, you try to play it down by saying, well, this wasn't quite like this, or even deny that it happened altogether, especially in the explosion in social media. We used to dismiss these people as cranks, but over the years they have increased and they've become much more vocal, especially in social media. 3 years ago, I was very proud to be invited by Councillor Anna King to speak at a meeting of the Northampton Borough Council, when it unanimously adopted the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, IHRA, definition of anti-Semitism, which makes it clear that anti-Semitism is racism, and it includes playing down the Holocaust or denying that it happened. And every year, the number of Holocaust survivors decreases. Eventually, there'll be no one left to tell the tale. It isn't just the Holocaust that is denied. Another example is the massacre of demonstrators in Tiananmen Square in 1989 by the Chinese military. Even though the actions were captured on film and countless videos still exist, the Chinese government pretends it didn't happen and heavily censors any discussion of it in China. Anyone commenting it on China is arrested and imprisoned. And in China, the internet and social media are heavily censored. The latest is that in Hong Kong, which has now been absorbed into the main Chinese state, the government has removed monuments to the atrocity that happened in Tiananmen Square to pretend that it didn't exist. I will be reciting 2 memorial prayers. The first is the multi-faith prayer, which was written especially for Holocaust Memorial Day by the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, the Chief Rabbi Ephraim Mervis, and Senior Imam Kari Azim. The prayer encourages communities to stand together, to stop division and prevent the spread of hate in society. It reminds us of the horrors of history when prejudices have driven people apart, and calls upon people of all faiths and none to stand together to support those who are suffering today. I will then sing the traditional Jewish memorial prayer, El Mole Rachamim, which means a Lord who is full of compassion. And this prayer goes back to the origins of Judaism. It was originally only said for close relatives, but it's been adapted over the years to meet different circumstances. And this prayer for martyrs, which is the one that I shall be reciting, was first composed in the 11th century during the time of the Crusades, when there was a great slaughter of Jews throughout Europe and the Middle East. And it was further adapted to remember the victims of the Holocaust after the war. Finally, there will be a minute's silence, which I will end by blowing the shofar, which is this instrument here. It's one of the oldest musical instruments known to mankind. It's made from a single ram's horn. It has no formal mouthpiece, keys or valves. Today, its religious use is confined to New Year, which is Rosh Hashanah, and the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. But at temple times, it had several secular uses, including sounding an alarm, announcing the start of the Jubilee year when all slaves were automatically freed. So after I've recited the memorial prayer, we will think of all those millions of people who perished at the hands of the Nazis and their allies during the 1 minute silence. And at the end, just as the shofar was blown to signify freedom of slaves, I will blow it today to commemorate and celebrate the freedom of those slaves who were released from Auschwitz 77 years ago today. Thank you. Loving God, we come to you with heavy hearts, remembering the 6 million Jewish souls murdered during the Holocaust. In the horrors of that history, when so many groups were targeted because of their identity, and in genocides which followed, we recognize destructive prejudices that drive people apart. Forgive us when we give space to fear, negativity, and hatred of others simply because they are different from us. In the light of God, we see everyone as equally precious, manifestations of the divine, and can know the courage to face the darkness. Through our prayers and actions, help us to stand together with those who are suffering so that light may banish all darkness, love will prevail over hate, and good will triumph over evil. Amen. I will now sing the El Mole Rachamim prayer, which will be followed by a minute's silence. El Mole Rachamim, Shachein Bam Ramim, Chamtze Menucha Nechana, Al Kanfei Hashchina, B'malaus Kadashim Utaharim, Kaskar Harakia Mashirim, Es Nishmos Hakadashim V'chatzacharim, Shemahu Chusu, Shenechargu, V'shenishkatu, V'shenifrafu, V'shenitbahu, V'shenechku, Al Kiddush Hashem, Al Yedei Hatramim, V'hergamonim, Yimach Shamam V'zichrom, Bahavur Sheblin Ederatein Yitztaka, Behad haskoras nishmechosechem, began Eden, Sehem menuchosom, lochem bahal horachamim, Yastireim b'seiseh kanafali olamim, v'yitzrar b'tzara hachayim, esh nismosehem, Adonai hu nachalasom, v'yonachu v'shalom, al mishkavosechem, v'nahomar, Amen.